Hi everyone, welcome back to Canary Cast. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and please stick around until the end of the video to hear about a great offer from our friends and supporters at FansBet. Anyway, today is a bit of a review of Luton. We'll spend 5-10 minutes on that, and then we're going to preview Huddersfield. We've got a Huddersfield fan joining us, Matt Shaw from the And He Takes That Chance podcast. We'll talk to Matt about all sorts towards the game, and we'll get a taste of what Huddersfield are about this season, etc., etc. But first, Jacob, let's talk Luton. 3-1 loss, pretty
Yeah.
much the reserves out, I think you could say. But still a disappointing loss.
Yeah, you kind of asked us with Michael Bailey and Chris Reeve, and I said we have a team that should win this game. I still stand by that. Looking at it though, it kind of screamed to me a team that had never really played together a competitive game compared to a team that had played a numerous seasons with one another.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't fancy it beforehand because I know the team should still beat Luton. I completely agree with you. But it was such a thrown together team. 5 debutants in the end, I think. And Luton are just plucky Luton, especially towards the back end of last season. I just didn't fancy it because it just didn't add up to a victory for me. Like I just didn't fancy it. But we did get a goal from Kieran Dowell, which was a nicely worked goal. Maybe fluky though. I think it looks better than maybe it was.
Bit of a swinger.
Yeah, yeah.
No, it was a good finish. Yeah, like you said about Luton, they were in a really good run of form at the end of last season. 9 games to go, they were out of it, and then obviously Nathan Jones comes in, and they've got a solid side there. Hopefully they stay up because they play some good football. I think at times the game was just in such a lull. I think it seemed like Norwich took it as a bit of a pre-season friendly. Luton up the ante really, and it's always weird, isn't it? No matter, I know 15 players were out, but as soon as you take Alex Tete out of that CDM role, we just fall to pieces.
Yeah.
It's old habits really were in there, weren't they? Struggling from corners, looking defensively unsure at times, but there were some signs of improvement, like you said, with a couple of players.
Yeah, I think Bali Mumba seems to have had. Well, most people seem to think he had a decent game actually.
Yeah, and there's parts of his game that are obviously very raw, but let's look at it in terms of he was playing right wing for South Shields at the end of
Yeah,
last season. And Stuart Webber and Daniel Farker have seen something in him to say, right, he's going to be a future right back for this club. I don't. I don't want to put too much pressure on him to start with. He's obviously not Max Aaron's. Like I say, he's very raw still. I'd like to see this developmental year for him and hopefully learn off the likes of Max and Sam Byram.
I felt for Daniel Barden. I don't want to be too harsh on him because he is third or fourth choice keeper and it was his debut, and we just shouldn't be too harsh on him. But I mean, James Collins hit a hat trick. He wasn't the best day at the office for him.
No, but he didn't do anything massively wrong. I don't think he could have really done anything about the goals. Really, his footwork was fine. He was very commanding of his area, which is impressive. And like you say, for a 19-year-old who his first ever game, he definitely probably didn't expect to start this season and be anywhere near it. He did well enough. I can't put any blame at his door for any of the goals.
Yeah. With the first 4 rounds of the Carabao Cup being in September, I personally think we're better off out of it. Yes, I know we have a big squad. Yes, it gives the other players a chance to play. But I think in terms of scheduling, we now have a week between each of our first 3 games, which is good for us this season because of what happened last season, if you know what I mean. Like we need to get off to a good start. And if we have more times between games, that gives us a better chance of doing so. Agreed?
No, yeah, I agree. I think, like you say, though, squad size probably, if it's as big as it is, it would have helped having a kind of distraction. But at the end of the day, I didn't really look at that game and think it was a must-win. And after the game, I wasn't thinking that this is our season derailed after one result. I think it's a shame. Would have liked to have won, but like you say, the main priority is the league and going up this year.
Yeah. You said there that the season won't be derailed with one game, but there was a bit of a reaction on socials with a fair few Norwich fans, panicking basically. But in reality, the team against Huddersfield on Saturday could be entirely different. Could be a completely different 11.
Yeah, and it is a habit. Obviously, 12 losses in a row now is not great. I can see why people were at pains with that. But like you say, it's going to be 8, 9 changes easily, potentially even 11. for the whole team. I was concerned with just the fluidity in the team. And it's a shame because, let's be honest, that team is our backup this year. And I'd like to have seen them press a lot better and be a lot more intensive with the way they're playing, simply so they push the players who are coming back. But I think looking at the players who are coming back from international duty, will be looking at them thinking, yeah, we're guaranteed a first 11 spot against Huddersfield now.
Yeah, just one last note on the Luton game before we move forward. Daniel Farker hasn't got that long with the squad this week, has he? Because the international players won't be back in training until, I would imagine, Thursday.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's going to have 2 days training with them, isn't he? That is my only concern ahead of Huddersfield, or heading into Huddersfield.
No, true. Hopefully you've done a bit of work beforehand, but I completely agree with you, mate. You don't know what they're going to come back in terms of condition-wise. Obviously, we're recording this before the games have been played. There could be an injury for any of the lads. Yeah, it's not ideal, but that's the championship, isn't it? At the end of the day, we got used to it. It's just getting that momentum. That the game against Huddersfield, I think, is a big game. If you win that, it starts off the season spot on. I'm not so sure. I know we'll go on to predictions later, but I wouldn't be. It's not an away banker for me.
Yeah. On that note, let's leave Luton in the past and move forward to Huddersfield. We'll get Matt Shaw on from And He Takes That Chance podcast.
Matt, thanks for joining us. You must be excited for the new season kicking off now.
Hi, mate. Thanks for inviting me on. Not really, to be honest, with the new season. As Huddersfield fans, we've had a bit of an anticlimactic 2 years, you could say. We've won about 18 games in 2 years, which has been pretty low. So yeah, I think a lot of people are falling out of love with football in West York, in our corner of West Yorkshire anyway. At the minute, we've not had a lot to cheer. We beat West Brom on Sky, which was a great result for the club, to stay in the league. And last year was all about firefighting really, and just trying to stay in the league. And then with 24 hours later, we part with the reason why we stayed in the league, which was an interesting and brave move from the board. And so far we've had a new man in, but very few movement in terms of players coming in and quite a lot going out. So there's quite a lot of trepidation moving into the new season at the moment.
You spoke about last season there, and I wanted to get more of an idea of, well, what went wrong, I guess, because you finished 18th, but you're only 3 points off the drop. So, Cowley seemed, from an outside perspective, Cowley seemed to come in and do okay. But from a Huddersfield fan point of view, what did go wrong last season?
I think to answer that, I'd have to go back to a little bit further to the Premier League. So we, and even further, actually, I think I'll go back to the Championship when your mate Stuart Webber was with us as well. Essentially, Stuart was the man behind bringing David Wagner in. You probably heard Stuart do a number of different interviews, and I was lucky enough to kind of work, not with Stuart, but I was a youth scout at Huddersfield at one point, and used to go into meetings with Stuart, and he's a very interesting character as well. And he knows exactly what he wants in terms of planning. He's very meticulous in terms of planning. He knew exactly what Huddersfield fans would want, in terms of a style of play. And he went out and got it for us. And it was a great move getting David Wagner in from Dortmund. But what David Wagner did was he created a huge wave of momentum, which took us from 19th. I think we finished 19th in the Championship, and the season after we got promoted through the playoffs, we'd never finished above 7th, I think, in the 8th maybe in the Championship since, or the second tier since we got promoted in 1969, 70. I might need to check that. But the wave that David Wagner created was amazing. The promotion was everything really was to do with David Wagner, and the players that David Wagner recommended and brought in. He brought in leaders, he brought in captains. Strong mentality, winning mentality. And it was great to watch. We played some great football. I know we didn't score a lot of goals, and people pan us, with the -2 goal difference, but, there's a little story behind that, which people tend not to look into too deep, which was more along the lines of we've pretty much secured the playoffs with a month to go. We were on, I think, 8 or 9 goal difference. And then we kind of, as you guys will know through Daniel Farker, when you play in high pressing, intense style, players tire. So I think we kind of had a month off, and that allowed us to kind of refocus, but we took a few hammerings in the way. And everything was great for the football club. And the problem was we got promoted on a wage bill, which was 11.6 million. which if you look at the club accounts, it'll say 22 because of the increases that come in at the end of the season and the bonuses on top of it. But the club was never really built or designed or in the background. Stuart Webber left to go to you guys because I believe one of the things he said is you had cryo chambers for the players and we just had cold baths, if you like. So, we weren't really set up for the Premier League, and staying up for that first season in the Premier League, which is another Wagner miracle, if you like, really kind of put us in a position where we had to go for it, really. We had to try and establish ourselves. And I don't think behind the scenes we ever really anticipated we would ever get there and then ever stay there. And the problem that we have then is we have an expectation whereby people will look at us and go, right, you've stayed up this season. You need to build up, you need to build on that and do something. And the club really wasn't set up for that. In terms of recruitment, we made an absolute mess of bringing players in because obviously Stuart Webber left. We brought in David Moss, who lasted a few months, and then we went 6 months without a director of football, and we had a recruitment team, which was basically a number of interns and people that had been there for a little while. So a Premier League club is having interns from gap years from university making decisions on multi-million-pound players, and we brought in some absolute shockers that summer. Adama Diakabi, Isaac and Benza. We spent a lot of money on poor players, and by the time the director of football or the ex-sporting director of Wolfsburg came in, which was Olaf Rebbe, a lot of our work had been done, and the club are still paying for these players that have come in. Even Terence Congolo, I know we can say this now with hindsight at Huddersfield, but we brought Terence Congolo in on loan whilst we're in the first season of the Premier League, and he was amazing. He got to the fringes of the Dutch squad, and only because they've got the likes of De Ligt, Van Dijk, Ake, etc. He wasn't getting in, but he then cost 17.5 million pounds for a defender that you probably don't really need. You're playing a centre back at left back, and our recruitment was really poor, and that really set the downfall in motion as to what you've seen, over the last 2 years. Because we can't really manoeuvre anyway. We've got players on big wages, not a lot of money come into the club because the old chairman moved on, and a lot of the parachute payments are going to pay the old chairman back of the investment that he's put into the club. So really what's happened is we're a club that lost a lot of games because the recruitment was bad. We lost David Wagner in January 2019. He was replaced by Jan Zever, and Jan Zever, interestingly enough, Jan Zever was Huddersfield's backup plan to Daniel Farke. So this is probably something you guys don't know, but when Stuart Webber was at the club, we almost lost David Wagner to Wolfsburg and Aston Villa, and we had a backup plan, which was Daniel Farke, who was the replacement for Wagner at the time, and then the second replacement idea was Jan Zevert. And obviously Daniel Farke went to Norwich, and once he's in at Norwich, we're not going to be able to go into Norwich and pick him, even though we were in the Premier League at the time, and you guys were middle of the Championship, I think, at that point. But to cut a long story short, because I'm waffling quite a lot, essentially Jan Zevert was a terrible choice. We never really made a contingency plan for David Wagner to leave the club, and we went back to an old plan, which was a couple of years old, which Stuart Webber had done, and it worked really poorly. We got 2 draws and 1 win, I think, in 16, 17 games. I think it was worse than the run you guys went on at the end of last season. It was really dreadful run. We ended up with 15 points, and a lot of the players were mentally damaged and drained from a really sort of tough 2 years in the Premier League. And the last thing you need when you're mentally drained and damaged is to go into a 46 game plus season in the Championship where you're getting knocked around quite a lot. And, some good players that we've got at the club were really sort of mentally damaged, and likes of Christopher Schindler at the back, who were excellent in the Premier League, and then in the Championship they're really struggling to adapt. And you mix that in with really bad recruitment again, and we were in a bit of a mess. And when Danny and Nicky Cowley came in, I think we got 1 point from 7, and then we got our 2nd point in the 9th game. So historically, nobody has ever stayed up in the Championship from that position. So that was the position they found themselves in.
Mm. A new dawn now, of course, with new boss Carlos Corberán, Bielsa's assistant at Leeds, of course. Are you expecting a sort of Bielsa-style press from him, or do you think his sort of tactical philosophy will be different to that of Bielsa's?
Yeah, so I think he's his own man. He's been brought up he's one of the sort of youth coaches of Spain. So that from what I know of Carlos Corberán, it was not household name, if you like. He's been brought up a very much possession-based coach from Valencia. He's had a number of different roles in Spain, where he's sort of bounced from youth coach to first team coach to assistant. I think he was assistant to Manuel Pellegrini at one point, which is good. So he's had Valverde. So he's had quite a good grounding there before moving to Saudi Arabia, and he's worked with Fabio Cannavaro in Saudi Arabia, and a couple of good names. And then he's come over to Leeds, and he's done quite a good job there over 3 years. I think he'll definitely take aspects from what Marcelo Bielsa has done. The quick transition from back to front, the system, the 4-1-4-1, and the way that the wingers push right up, and the strikers and wingers clutch a bit more in the centre. So I've definitely seen that already in pre-season, but you've also got to have the quality of player to be able to pull that off. And if you don't have the quality of player to pull it off, things will start to slow down and unravel, and that's what we're going to find out.
Okay, let's talk transfers. Jacob, I'm going to come to you first, and I'll come back to you, Matt. From an outside perspective, Jacob, what have you made of Huddersfield's transfer business this summer?
There's not much going on, mate. I think we spoke to Matt off pod as well, and he's not too impressed with what's going on. I think the main one for me, looking from the outside and looking to the game on Saturday, is that Karlan Grant might not be available. Obviously, from the outside, he looked good in the Premier League at times in a poor side, and 19 goals last season. I know a few of them were penalties, but I think if he stays, he'd definitely cause Norwich problems at the weekend.
Yeah, I fear Karlan Grant as well, Matt. Is that your main danger man, if you like?
Yeah, so Karlan Grant and Steve Mounier. Steve Mounier, striker we bought first season in the Premier League for 11 million. His goal, to be fair, his goals kept us up in the first season. He did a steady job, and it fell apart a little bit after that. But yeah, so Karlan Grant is a very specific kind of striker. He needs a certain set of circumstances to get the best out of him. He's not a good all-round striker. A friend of mine says he's a League One footballer and a Premiership finisher. So make of that what you will. So if he's got the ball, if he cuts in from the left-hand side onto his right foot, there's probably, I wouldn't say there's anyone actually better in the division than Karlan Grant at finding the back of the net. I think last year he got 19 goals, 7 penalties, 2 were questionable on goals. But the vast majority were cutting in from the left-hand side, and finding the bottom or top corner. And it's a specialty of his. But neither of them will be playing on Saturday, as they're both about to leave for pastures new. Yeah.
Any other sort of transfer business of note? I saw you got Pereira on loan from Man United. Are you expecting anything of those sorts of signings?
I think, to be honest, the goalkeeper situation at the club is a strange one. Another poor Premier League signing was Ben Hamer, who started the second season that we were in the Premier League. So he had a very poor introduction. Man City away is a very tough game, as I'm sure you guys will know. And we shipped 6 there, and 3 of them were sadly Ben Hamer's fault. And he didn't really recover from that, to be honest. And I think he's a really nice character, good guy is Ben Hamer, but when he never really stood a chance after that, and the fans were on his back. And he spent last year at Derby. Derby didn't want to take up any sort of permanent signing. He didn't really do very well at Derby. And I think that the plan this year was to push through Ryan Schofield, who's an England youth keeper that we've got. But sadly, Ryan Schofield broke his thumb in pre-season. And I think Pereira was coming in just to be a backup goalkeeper. Pereira, don't look at what Hearts fans say.
Hands.
Yeah, put spaghetti fingers and all sorts on there, don't they? Yeah, so he's obviously, I've not seen him play yet, so I'll reserve judgment. But for me, the plan once Schofield got injured should have been to bring in a first-choice goalkeeper until January at least. But it's going to be a tricky one with Hamer and Pereira by the looks of things. Okay. But apart from those two, Pereira and Danny Ward's come back. Danny Ward, an ex-Huddersfield player, he's done quite well since leaving the club. But I'm not sure he's going to quite fill the boots of Karlan Grant or Mounier.
Yeah, probably a fair assumption. Let's talk the game itself. Let's look forward to Saturday, 3:00 kickoff, of course. The first thing that springs to mind when I sort of think about links between Norwich and Huddersfield is obviously Stuart Webber. You spoke about him briefly before. You said that you'd done a bit of work with him. What have you made of sort of his exploits since he's left Huddersfield and come to Norwich?
It's almost like copy and paste, wasn't it? Went to Germany, did the same thing. I presume he'll do the same thing again. I remember reading an interview with him where he believes that the German coaching system, the how to get through the and get your badges and everything to get through is probably the most difficult in Europe. Yeah. So I think he sees that as the premier template, if you like. So yeah, he's done well. I don't wish him any ill. The club were a little bit unhappy with the way he left the club. I think we got to interview Dean Hoyle, the ex-chairman, about that. And one thing he said was that he felt that Stuart was a little bit jealous that David Wagner attracted all the attention, for the job that they were doing. And Stuart Webber felt like his nose had been put out and then went to seek other things. It seemed like a jealousy thing, but to be honest, I think Stuart's furthered his career. I think it's probably proved to be the right move, and he's done well. I don't wish him any ill, so all the best to him.
Yeah. The other link, of course, is Alex Pritchard. Jacob, I'll come to you on this one. He's going to score, isn't he? He just is.
He's not, no.
I hate Alex Pritchard. I'm not a fan of hating on footballers, but the way he spent half of his time at Norwich injured, came in for 10, 15 games and was very good, to be fair to him, and then demanded that he left the club for a Premier League move. No offence to Huddersfield. I like Huddersfield as a club. I'm delighted that he has crashed and burned.
Yeah, he's probably up there with the worst signings that we've made in terms of recruitment. He was completely the wrong type of number 10. We did actually want James Maddison, but couldn't afford the price or the wages that came with it at that point.
He would have been a lot better.
I think so. I think hindsight tells us that as well, doesn't it? But yeah, he was completely wrong. We had prior to Alex Pritchard coming in, we had Izzy Brown and Casey Palmer, who were more powerful number 10s, who would run directly with the ball. They much more suited, the style that we had. Your Josh King number 10, that sort. Yeah. Very good play, good players. And Alex Pritchard was just, I don't know. He's just got no pace. He can't get away. His decision making's, I've seen Alex Pritchard before at Norwich and at Brentford and Spurs, Swindon, and he did very well. In a lot of spells there. I'm struggling to name more than one good game he's had for us, and he's probably pound for pound one of the worst signings the club has ever made. And I don't dislike the guy. He's just not happened. And one thing that he's had, to be fair to him, he's had an issue with his knee since he signed. I think it came up on the medical. He's got a cyst on his knee, and I think it plays on his mind quite a lot, and I think it's really affected him. But it's a move that really hasn't worked out. But new manager, new style, and you never know whether he'll come good.
Yeah,
let's hope so for us anyway.
It's a real shame it hasn't worked out for him. Right, lads, we're going to have to stick our necks on the line and talk about how we think the game is going to go now. What are you expecting? I know it's difficult in terms of first game of the season, Matt, but what do you think this Huddersfield are going to look like on Saturday? Sort of line up, shape, that sort of thing.
Youthful will be the answer. Ben Hamer, I think, will start in goal. We should be announcing a new right back tomorrow, but I don't think he'll start. So I think it'll either be Aaron Rowe or Dehaney will play right back again. Both very young players. Aaron Rowe. I think he's made he started a couple of games in the Premier League. He's more of a winger than a fullback, but he's playing fullback and he's on his wrong foot, so that's an interesting one to watch. But he's done okay, to be fair to him so far. Schindler will play centre back. Richard Stearman is the more experienced defender, but if you're trying to play out from the back with a high line, Richard Stearman, Tommy Elphick, I don't think it'll be very long for our football club. So I would imagine they will either keep Ramoni Critchlow there, who you guys probably won't know a lot of, or Romani Edmonds-Green, who was on loan at Swindon. And Harry Toffolo, who you guys will know, will probably play left back. Yeah. Then we'll have a defensive midfielder, which will be Jonathan Hogg, will drop into the two defenders, so he'll split the two defenders. So we'll look to play that 4-1-4-1. Hogg will split and try and dictate out from the back three. And then in midfield, Lewis O'Brien is probably our star man, aside from Grant. I think he's injured as well, so I don't think he's going to be fit to start. So you may see a couple of young ones in there. Ben Jackson played last week, and Ben Jackson's also a left back, so he's playing out of position. Josh Osterfield might play. Alex Pritchard will probably play in that attacking 8 role, with Janino Bakuna either central or left, with Karoma on the right and Danny Ward up front. So that will probably be how we would line up, I would suspect.
Jacob, does that strike fear into you, mate?
The only thing that strikes fear to me, mate, is Juninho Bacuna's various hairstyles. I don't know how many he's had. Probably had more hairstyles and goals as an Huddersfield.
He's an eclectic player. Is Juninho Bacuna? Let's say he's. I'll be honest with you. I think if you break down Juninho Bacuna's 90 minutes, you would say that he spends 5 minutes of it looking world class. There are certain points where he's got an amazing ability as Juninho Bacuna. He's got real great feet. He can beat players for fun. He's got great delivery. He can score great goals. He's got a lot of talent. But if you've ever coached youth football, you'll notice that a lot of kids are like daisy. You call them daisy watchers up here. I don't know if you guys do, but a lot of kids will sit there and they'll be watching butterflies in the background. And Juninho Bacuna reminds me of that a little bit in that he spends a large proportion of the game just letting it just drift by, and then he'll spend 10 minutes in it where he looks an amazing player. And if we can get him to do something in that little spell, that's where our best chances tend to lie. Like I say, he's got a lot of ability. But aside from that, he's very inconsistent, shall we say, and that's it proves a frustration. But if Carlos Corberan can get a consistent 30 to 40 minutes out of him weekly, then we will have a very good player in this league in him.
Okay. It's time to make some predictions. Jacob, I'll come to you first. I want a scoreline and some sort of explanation as to why you think that.
Well, before we started this chat, I was thinking, especially with Norwich, we've got quite a few new players. It's going to take a bit of time to get used to everything. But it sounds like a lot of square pegs in round holes at Huddersfield at the moment. So I'm kind of more aiming towards a Norwich win now. We always concede, so it doesn't matter what kind of quality of player Huddersfield are putting out. I'm going to say 3-1 to Norwich.
Okay. Matt, same to you. What do you think is going to happen?
I think it's a fair prediction, to be honest. I think the interesting thing to see from Norwich's point of view is how that run at the end of the season has affected a lot of players and the mindset of a lot of players, because obviously we've seen how it's affected us. But it seems like you've actually looked at that and identified that, and you've had a bit of a turnaround. Yeah. So again, I'm looking at Norwich and thinking, let's see how this run has affected them. And with the turnaround, with the sort of turnover of players that you've had, how sort of used to each other are you? And obviously, you've had the result against Luton, which obviously I don't think was essentially your first side anyway, was it? But so the hope that I've got is that you're probably a little bit unsure of what you want to do yet this season. But I think that's a bit of a forlorn hope, to be honest with you. I think Norwich will win this game quite easily. I think it'll be comfortable. I think Huddersfield's problem will be they'll look good up until the final third, and then the final third they'll look pretty blunt. So I'm thinking 2-3-0 in this one.
Okay, I'll take that. For what it's worth, before this chat, I fancied a 1-1 draw. Norwich should win on paper, but we were just so disjointed against Luton. And again, it's probably completely a new 11. So I thought, well, maybe we'll drop 2 points. But having had this chat, I actually feel more confident, to be honest with you. If I'm being completely honest now. I'm not sure whether to push for a win. No, I'll stick with 1-1. I'll be conservative because I don't think it will be the Norwich team you see on Saturday. Sort of 6 months down the line, we will be a lot better. I think we are going to be disjointed for the first few weeks. So I'll go 1-1.
I don't think it's going to be a pretty game, is it? To be honest, I think with everything we said, it's not going to be a great watch.
No, definitely. I think it's mostly about you guys than us. And I'm pretty sure I know what to expect with us. You'll see a lot of effort, a lot of trying to control the game from the back, which we're not too bad at, to be fair. The key for us is how disjointed you are and how we can get, transition into that final third and create chances. If you let us do that, then we've got every chance of getting something from the game. But at the minute, without Carl and Grant, Steve Mounier, it feels like it might be a tall order for us. So I'm leaning against a defeat. But if you guys are as disjointed as you are midweek, then we've got every chance of picking something up. So again, it's all on you guys, really. Pressure's on you.
Okay, I think that wraps it up nicely. Matt, thanks so much for joining us. What have you got planned on the And He Takes That Chance podcast this season?
So this season coming up, we've tended to go with a bit of a live format. So what we do is, because we use Zoom for recordings currently with everything going on. So what we do is we record it live on YouTube, and we invite Huddersfield fans to do it with us if you like. So they tend to pepper us in the comment section and tell us we're talking nonsense if you like, which they're very welcome to do. And then what I do is then take it offline and then rebrand it and re-upload it and then send it out to SoundCloud. We've got something. We're trying to do something interesting in the coming weeks. I've teamed up with an illustrator to do a an illustration and a narration, a Tifo style one,
Nice.
which I'm going to have a go at, which will be interesting. I've looked at it, so the illustrations are good, but it's on me to make it fit together, which will be good. But yeah, we're going to have a go at that and a few other things. And we usually have a couple of ex-pros like to join in with us as well, which is great. We're really lucky to have some really great ex-players that like to join. You might not be a name to you guys, but likes of Ian Dunn, Matt Clennon, and we might have Phil Senior on next week, who's an ex-goalkeeper for us as well. So we're really lucky with the people that we can get on board, and the Huddersfield fans that have been really kind to us so far as well, with not giving us too much stick for talking nonsense. So but yeah, so we're going to go with that format, and hopefully we'll get a couple of guests on at some point as well. So, but we'll just see how that goes for now.
Sounds great, and best of luck for the season as well. Let's hope
You too, lads. Thank you.
Further away from that relegation zone this season. Me and Jake will be back, of course, soon. We'll be discussing all sorts. But don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Feel free to leave a comment down below. But for now, that's it. Thanks for joining us. See ya.
Hi everyone, just a quick one. Canary Cast have teamed up with FansBet, a bookmaker that is made by the fans for you, fans. We are able to offer you an introductory offer whereby FansBet will boost your deposit by 50% up to the value of £100. To use this offer, click the link in the description below.